What's good, everyone? Welcome to the second week of this training blog, which is week 9 with the Evolve AI, and nothing has changed in this strength block. Frequency of squats, benching, and deadlifts remains the same. Everything is the same in terms of weight for my check-in. The only thing noted here on this first day of the week was a sore back, and I was looking for an efficient session. Now what I'm showing here is the assisted hip airplanes, which I like to do before every squat session because they really help open up my hips, and this is something I got from Squat University, of course. As mentioned, I am turning off benchmark sets, but I wanted to show the difference. So benchmark sets have 4 sets of 3 plus a heavy top single at RPE 8, where top sets have 3 sets of 3 plus a 4th set of 3 at a heavyish weight. As you'll see here, I do anything and everything necessary to get my body comfortable before placing it under load. One thing I was missing from Juggernaut AI were the suggested warm-ups with plate mapping, but as I found out later in the week, they don't really work for me, so I'm going to go back to what I used to do using the suggested warm-ups from the Strength Athlete. So this is the top set of 3 at 315, which I was feeling in my lower back because, as noted, that felt a little stiff and sore when I woke up Monday morning. But I got through it. It wasn't too difficult, but it was certainly more difficult than if I had done a single for the benchmark sets. The back off or working sets were much easier on this day because of the lower weight, and everything went off without a hitch. I got through all 3 sets of 3 with no issues. Incline bench is feeling really great. I'm happy to be working with some heavier weights here at 175, 4 sets by 3. That went well, as are deadlifts. Deadlifts are feeling really great, and the deficit deadlifts are feeling exceptional. So I'm really feeling optimistic about how I'm going to perform on my deadlifts. And as you'll see later in the week, things are going pretty well. Now day 2 is still an upper body / chest focus day. Things are going pretty well here, no complaints. My right shoulder has been holding out pretty well, at least in the first half of the week. No issues with clicking or pain at all. And I'm really enjoying these overhead triceps extensions after cutting a groove into the first generation upper bar from the lat low row. This was something I enjoyed in the gym, and I'm happy to be doing them at home. The other exercise I like to do with the pulley system are bicep curls, but at my height of 6'2", standing I would end up finding the limit of the cable and not get the full extension. So here I'm using the plyo box to kneel and allowing me to get full extension. Recently I reached out to my man Brandon for some coaching advice, and here's a snippet of what he had to say.
No, it's all good. I just looked them over really quick, so easy stuff.
Yeah. All right, cool. With the rules, no rule book available yet, but they're going to do a rule meeting typically before the meet, right?
Yeah. So on your registration, it should tell you like when the different flights are, if there's different times. Sometimes there's a morning and an afternoon session, but usually it'll say, you can weigh in starting at X time because USAPL does 2-hour weigh in. So like you have some wiggle room there. And they also say rules meeting. And typically the rules meeting will be for that session. So if there's a morning and an afternoon, you can do like an afternoon session rules meeting, but it should tell you the timing of it. And what happens is typically the meet director or the head referee will pull everybody aside and say, hey guys, we're going to go over the rules. And they'll cover the 3 main lifts: squat, bench, deadlift, and what commands need to be followed in order to get a good lift. They usually talk about squat depth as well, just to remind people, and basically open it up for any questions. Sometimes the questions that come up are things around like, if you want to set a state record, do you need to announce it? Sometimes it's about certain equipment things like, hey, can I wear my headband or something like that, which should be checked as part of, in some cases, the equipment check that we've already talked about. But otherwise, it's just kind of focusing on the rules and the commands. So no one gets a red light for a dumb reason, because again, no one wants to complete a lift only to get a no lift call because they didn't wait for a rack command or they didn't wait for a press command or something like that.
Cool. Now, one thing I had a question about in terms of rules was with benching. I know they changed some rules late last year. I don't know if that was USAPL or IPF. Is it still okay to put your feet up, do a glute bridge kind of thing, get yourself into position?
Yeah, so from my understanding, USAPL still allows that. And they have changed some of their rules in terms of, does your head need to be down and things like that. So I would definitely check up on that because they have changed stuff in the last year when they split with the IPF. But the main things for the bench are like, you have to have certain points of contact at all times. So like your butt has to stay on the bench, your shoulders have to stay on the bench. And that's typically what the side judges will look for.
If you choose to lift off on your own, you could have the butt off the bench to lift off, but once you get the bar in place, you're supposed to bring your butt down, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that could throw some people off. So USAPL is a federation that allows liftoffs. However, you cannot pick the person yourself. So they have a dedicated spotter that works as a liftoff person. If you don't want it, as you go up for your attempt, you just tell them, I don't need a liftoff. Otherwise, if you do want to lift off, common practice is to tell that person how you like it. So, I'm going to count to 3 or on 3 or go out, up, whatever the case may be. Standard fare. So if you want to take a lift off, that's great. Again, I would probably stick to what you do in training. Since you train alone without a spotter, I would probably say it doesn't make sense to get a lift off necessarily, because you don't want to change too many variables, in my opinion.
Right.
And then in that case, yes, you're right. So when you lift it off, you will not get a start command until the bar is motionless, your elbows are locked out, and all points that need to be touching are touching. And then at that point, the head referee will give a start command.
What about grip width? Is there a rule about touching rings or something like that?
So the max width that you're allowed to use is you have to have at least your index finger on the ring. So that's the furthest width you can go. Otherwise, inside, no issues.
That's good, because I usually have somewhat of a narrow to medium grip. I don't go out to the rings too much anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as you're still able to have a full range of motion where you can come down, rest the bar on your chest or touch the chest, so to say, get the press command and then fully extend for a lockout, that's fine. No problems.
All right. Cool. So let's start with the programming for the second half of the week, where I switched day 3 and day 4. So what I wanted to do was, since day 3 is the full SBD day, I wanted to use that as the mock meet on Saturday. So instead of doing that on day 3, I moved day 4 to day 3, which is Thursday. I took Friday off, and then I put day 3 on Saturday, and I did the mock meet so I can really gauge where I'm at with my training, my strength, my preparedness, and so on. On Thursday, my bench really kind of felt some pain in my shoulder. Those of you with a keen eye might have noticed the third repetition on that first top set required me to bounce the bar on my chest because of the shoulder pain, and only came into play again with the floor presses you'll see in a moment. All accessories were going well, squats went well this day, and I was grateful to have another day off in between this third day and the fourth day of the week. Now, the one win I had today was I finally got to bump up my weight to 20 pounds for these lateral raises. It had been a long time. I've been at 17.5, so that was a nice win and a nice boost to my motivation. Because of the pain I felt on bench, I decided to keep the weight low on these floor presses just to make sure I don't aggravate it. Now here again, I'm using the pulley system because I'm trying to use the pulley a little more frequently and keep the timing to my training sessions down a bit. So I didn't stick to the programming in terms of reps, sets, and weights. I decided to do the mock meet, as I said, and I decided to also engage the benchmark sets as a real test, since that's one set at RPE 8. So for benchmark set, I put myself at 90%, and then I did a second benchmark set, if you will, at 95%, which would be what my second attempt would be on the competition day. And that went pretty well in terms of giving me an idea where I stand. So let's break down the squats. I put my benchmark set at what would be my first attempt in the competition at 350 pounds. That went off well. Then I took a break of about 10 minutes or so to kind of mimic what I've seen in the 2 competitions that I've attended as a spectator. Came back, went into the rack, tried my second attempt at 365, which was my PR from last year in May, and that didn't go so well. I failed that lift, but that's okay. Definitely a good experience. That gives me a really good idea of what I really need to work on. I do still have 6 more weeks of training, so I'm really not worried. I really want to stick to this plan of the first attempt and second attempts at the weights that I had today. I think I can definitely do that. I mean, I hit that as a PR last year. So with 6 more weeks, if I stick to the program and really get enough rest and all the other things that need to come into play, I really am confident that I can achieve those goals for the actual meet. So my first attempt was at 255. That's about 91% of my 1 rep max, and that went off okay. Went into the second attempt at 275. I succeeded in the lift, but in the attempt I noticed my butt came off the bench, so I would have had some red lights if this was the actual competition, because deadlifts have been going really well all along. So I went through the process of warming up, 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates, and everything was going well, and I was kind of taking my time between the warm-up sets. For my first attempt, again, I wanted to aim for about 90 to 91%, so I started off with 365, and then I added another 10 pounds and went from 365 to 375, which I was completely confident I would hit because my last PR was 385, and I pulled that off, no problems. A little bit slow coming off the ground, but once I got it past my knees, I knew I had that lift. So this is the information that I wanted to get from this mock meet. That's perfect to take me into the next 6 weeks. When I finish this strength block, I feel pretty confident going into competition. Not that I'm necessarily going to hit any PRs, I should say, that's pretty much how the day went and wrapping up this week. Moving on to next week, which is the third week of the vlog series. I hope you'll stay tuned. I appreciate your time and your support, and I'll catch you on the next one.